On this day, November 30th, 1939, one of history's greatest underdog stories began. The world was already reeling from the start of World War II just 3 months earlier. Now, the Soviet Union, led by Joseph Stalin, turned its attention to its small northern neighbor, Finland. Stalin wanted a buffer zone to protect Leningrad, and he demanded that Finland hand over significant territory along their border. The Finns, a proud and independent people, flatly refused. In response, Stalin unleashed the mighty Red Army, a colossal force of 450,000 soldiers, backed by thousands of tanks and aircraft, poured across the Finnish border. Their mission was simple: crush the Finnish resistance and secure the territory within weeks. Facing them was a tiny Finnish army of just 34,000 active troops. On paper, it was a laughable mismatch, a guaranteed Soviet victory. But history, as we know, loves to surprise us. What unfolded next stunned the world and became a masterclass in courage and strategy. This was the start of the Winter War. The Soviet commanders expected a swift and decisive campaign, a military parade to Helsinki. They envisioned their massive tank columns rolling through the Finnish countryside with ease. But they hadn't accounted for two things: the brutal Finnish winter and the unyielding Finnish spirit. The invasion began at the onset of one of the coldest winters in recent memory. With temperatures plummeting to -40 degrees Celsius, the Red Army, poorly equipped for these conditions, found themselves trapped. Their vehicles stalled, their soldiers froze, and their long, exposed supply lines became a perfect target. This is where the Finnish genius for warfare truly shone. They didn't try to fight the Soviets head-on. That would have been suicide. Instead, they became ghosts in the snow, dressed in white camouflage and gliding silently on skis. They moved like phantoms through the dense, snow-covered forests. They were fighting on their home turf, and they used every inch of it to their advantage. They would appear out of nowhere, strike hard and fast against the lumbering Soviet columns, and then vanish back into the blizzard. These Finnish ski troops became legendary. They would isolate pockets of the Red Army, cutting them off from supplies and reinforcements. A tactic they called Marty, which means a bundle of firewood ready to be chopped. The surrounded Soviet soldiers, demoralized and freezing, were then systematically picked apart. The Finns were masters of guerrilla warfare. They knew the terrain, they were used to the cold, and they were fighting for their homes and their freedom. This incredible determination has a name in Finland: Sisu. It's a word that embodies their national character, a unique blend of grit, resilience, courage, and sheer stubbornness. It was Sisu that fueled their fight against impossible odds. During this conflict, a simple yet devastatingly effective weapon became famous: the Molotov cocktail. When Soviet Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Miletov falsely claimed on state radio that Soviet bombers were dropping food baskets, not bombs, on Finland, the Finns responded with grim humor. They started calling the Soviet bombs Miletov's bread baskets, and, in turn, they named their own makeshift anti-tank weapon a glass bottle filled with flammable liquid, the Molotov cocktail, a drink to go with the food. These small, cheap weapons, when thrown at the engine grills of Soviet tanks, proved incredibly effective at disabling the metal beasts, becoming a symbol of civilian resistance against a mechanized army. For over 100 days, the tiny nation of Finland held the Soviet giant at bay, inflicting staggering casualties. The world watched in awe as David fought Goliath in the snow. Reports from the front lines told tales of Finnish snipers, like the legendary Simo Häyhä, who became known as White Death for his incredible number of confirmed kills. The Red Army's losses were catastrophic. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were killed or wounded, and thousands of tanks and aircraft were destroyed. The invasion that was supposed to take a few weeks had turned into a bloody, humiliating quagmire for Stalin. However, Sisu and clever tactics could only hold back the tide for so long. The sheer numerical superiority of the Soviet Union was overwhelming. They brought in fresh troops, better commanders, and relentlessly pounded the Finnish defenses with massive artillery bombardments. Exhausted and running out of ammunition, the Finns were finally forced to the negotiating table. In March 1940, the Moscow Peace Treaty was signed, ending the Winter War. Finland managed to preserve its independence, a monumental achievement. But it came at a heavy price. They had to cede about 11% of their territory to the Soviet Union. Despite the territorial loss, the Winter War was a moral victory for Finland and a strategic disaster for the Soviet Union. The Red Army's poor performance and immense casualties exposed its deep-seated weaknesses to the entire world. And someone was paying very close attention. Adolf Hitler. Watching the Soviets struggle in Finland, he became convinced that the Red Army was a hollow force, an easy target. This miscalculation would prove fatal just over a year later when he launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. Expecting a similarly quick victory, the Winter War, a small conflict in the frozen north, had unknowingly set the stage for the largest and bloodiest front of World War II. It remains a powerful testament to how courage, ingenuity, and a fighting spirit can challenge even the mightiest of foes. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this piece of history, be sure to like and subscribe for more.